The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on Adelaide Evans as she stood on her porch, wiping sweat from her brow with a weathered hand. At 38, she had long since resigned herself to a life of solitude, the dreams of love and family fading like the distant mountains in the summer haze. The year was 1878, and Adelaide had carved out a modest existence for herself on the edge of Promise Creek, a growing but still rough-hewn town that had sprung up following the silver strike of '71. "Miss Evans," called a voice from the road. "Got your supplies?" Adelaide shaded her eyes and watched as the supply wagon approached, driven by old Sam Porter. She descended the porch steps carefully, mindful of the slight ache in her knee, a souvenir from being thrown from a horse in her younger days. "Afternoon, Sam," she said, approaching the wagon. "Hope the journey from Tucson wasn't too treacherous this time." Sam chuckled, his white beard quivering. "Nothing this old-timer can't handle. Though there's news of Comancheros causing trouble up north." He began unloading her monthly supplies. "Oh, nearly forgot there's a new fellow in town. Bought the old Hargrove place. Plans to raise horses, I hear." Adelaide nodded politely, but felt little curiosity. New arrivals to Promise Creek were common enough these days, especially young men with big dreams that the harsh reality of frontier life would soon temper. "I also brought you these," Sam added, pulling out a small parcel. "Seeds for them tomatoes you like. Martha said you'd be wanting them." "That's kind of you both," Adelaide replied, taking the package. "Please give her my thanks." After Sam departed, Adelaide returned to her daily chores. The small ranch she had inherited from her father required constant attention. She had a few head of cattle, chickens, and a productive vegetable garden that supplied not only her needs, but earned her a modest income at the town market. As twilight approached, Adelaide sat on her porch, darning socks by the last of the day's light. The distant sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. A rider approached, silhouetted against the setting sun. She set aside her work and stood, instinctively reaching for the shotgun she kept nearby. The rider slowed as he neared the house. "Hello there," he called, his voice deep and clear in the evening air. "Might I trouble you for some water? My horse and I have had a long journey." "The well's around back," Adelaide replied cautiously. "You're welcome to water your horse." The man dismounted with fluid grace, leading his magnificent palomino toward the well. Adelaide followed at a distance, shotgun still in hand. As he drew closer, she could see him more clearly, tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His dark blonde hair was tied back neatly, and despite the dust of travel, his clothes spoke of quality. "I'm obliged, madam," he said, tipping his hat. "Name's Rylan Archer. Just acquired the old Hargrove property." "Adelaide Evans," she replied, her grip on the shotgun relaxing slightly. "Sam Porter mentioned someone had bought that place." Rylan smiled, revealing straight white teeth. "It needs work, but the land's good for horses. I plan to breed and train them." He paused as his horse drank deeply. "Sam told me there was a neighbor lady who might sell me some chickens to get started." Adelaide found herself returning his smile despite her usual reserve. "That would be me, I suppose. I can spare a few hens and maybe a rooster, if you're interested." "I'd be much obliged," Rylan said. "Ranch feels mighty empty with just me and this fella." He patted his horse's neck affectionately. After watering his mount, Rylan promised to return the next day to discuss the chickens. As he rode away in the gathering dusk, Adelaide was surprised to find herself looking forward to his visit. True to his word, Rylan returned the following afternoon. Adelaide showed him her chicken coop, explaining her methods for keeping predators at bay and ensuring healthy birds. "You've done well for yourself here," Rylan observed, looking around her neat homestead. "Not many women managing on their own in these parts." "I've had practice," Adelaide replied. "My father died 7 years ago. Been on my own since then." "No husband?" Rylan asked, then immediately looked chagrined. "Forgive me, that's not my business." Adelaide smiled tightly. "No husband. Never found the right time or the right man." Over the next few weeks, Rylan became a regular visitor. He purchased not only chickens, but also took Adelaide's advice on various aspects of ranching. She found herself enjoying his company, his easy laugh and genuine interest in her opinions refreshing after years of being largely ignored by the men in town. One afternoon, Rylan arrived with his wagon. asking if she might accompany him to town for supplies. I could use your expertise, he explained, and I thought you might appreciate the company. Adelaide hesitated only briefly before agreeing. As they drove toward Promise Creek, Rylan spoke of his past, how he'd grown up in Texas, worked cattle drives, saved his money, and eventually decided to settle down and raise horses. What about you? He asked. You mentioned your father, but not much else. Adelaide gazed at the distant mountains. Not much to tell. Came west with my parents when I was 16. Mother died of fever that first winter. Father and I worked the land, made it through the lean years. He taught me everything I know about ranching. No suitors? Rylan inquired gently. Adelaide laughed softly. There was one. Thomas Blackwell. We were to be married when I was 22. Her expression grew somber. He was killed in a dispute over water rights. After that, well, time passes. In these parts, women tend to marry young. By 30, most consider you firmly on the shelf. Rylan's eyes studied her face. Seems a waste. You're a fine-looking woman, Adelaide Evans. Smart, too. She felt a blush creep into her cheeks and quickly changed the subject. In town, Adelaide became acutely aware of the glances and whispers as she and Rylan made their purchases. Martha Porter, Sam's wife and the proprietress of the general store, raised her eyebrows meaningfully as she wrapped their goods. Seen you two together quite a bit lately, Martha commented when Rylan stepped outside to load the wagon. He's new to ranching, Adelaide explained. Just being neighborly. Martha's smile was knowing. He's a handsome one. And those blue eyes. Must be 30 or so. 34, Adelaide corrected, then immediately regretted revealing that she knew. Only 4 years younger than you, Martha observed. Not so much, really. Adelaide shook her head. Don't start matchmaking, Martha. I'm too old for such foolishness. And he's not interested in a spinster like me. Martha merely smiled. If you say so, dear. As summer progressed into fall, Rylan continued to visit regularly. He brought Adelaide a rocking chair he'd crafted himself, installed a new pump at her well, and often stayed for supper, entertaining her with stories of his travels. Adelaide found herself looking forward to his visits, taking more care with her appearance, and experimenting with recipes she thought he might enjoy. One crisp October evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, Rylan turned to her. I've been meaning to ask you something, Adelaide. Her heart fluttered unexpectedly. What's that? There's a harvest dance in town next Saturday. Would you consider attending with me? Adelaide stared at him, momentarily speechless. A dance? With you? Rylan nodded, his expression earnest. I'd be honored to escort you. Adelaide stood abruptly. I don't dance anymore, Rylan. And I think perhaps you've misunderstood our friendship. His brow furrowed. How so? I'm 38 years old. You're younger, with your whole life ahead of you. You should be courting a young woman who can give you children, a proper family. Rylan rose to his feet, standing close enough that she could smell the clean scent of soap and leather that always seemed to surround him. Adelaide, I'm hardly a boy at 34, and I know exactly what I want. His voice dropped lower. Who I want. She shook her head, taking a step back. This is foolishness. I'm past the age for romance, and certainly for starting a family. That's not true, he said gently. You've just convinced yourself it is. Please, Rylan. I think it's best if you go now. For a moment, he looked as though he might argue further, but then he nodded, retrieving his hat. I'll respect your wishes, Adelaide, but I hope you'll reconsider about the dance. He paused at the steps. And about us. After he left, Adelaide remained on the porch long into the night, her thoughts in turmoil. Rylan's interest had awakened feelings she'd thought long dead: hope, desire, the yearning for companionship. But she couldn't shake the conviction that she was too old, that the time for such dreams had passed her by. The week passed without a visit from Rylan, and Adelaide told herself it was for the best. Yet she found herself listening for hoofbeats each afternoon, her heart sinking when evening came and he hadn't appeared. The night of the harvest dance arrived, and Adelaide sat alone by her fire, pretending to read but unable to focus on the words. A knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Rylan standing there, dressed in his finest, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. I know you said no, he began, but I couldn't stay away. Adelaide took the flowers hesitantly. Rylan, I meant what I said. I'm too. If you say old one more time, I might just lose my patience, he interrupted, a hint of exasperation in his voice. Adelaide, age is just a number. It's not about how many years you've lived, but how many you have left and who you spend them with. She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. Finding none, she whispered, I'm afraid. Of what? Of hoping again. Of being hurt. Rylan stepped closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek. That's a risk we all take, Adelaide. But some things are worth risking everything for. When his lips met hers, Adelaide felt as though the years fell away. The kiss was tender at first, then grew in intensity as she responded, her arms wrapping around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Rylan rested his forehead against hers. Now, about that dance. Adelaide laughed softly. Let me get my shawl. The Promise Creek Town Hall was transformed for the harvest celebration, with autumn leaves and cornstalks decorating the walls and tables laden with food prepared by the town's women. As Rylan escorted Adelaide inside, conversations quieted momentarily as curious eyes turned their way. Martha Porter approached immediately, her face wreathed in smiles. Adelaide, so glad you could make it. And Mr. Archer, how nice to see you again. As Martha drew Adelaide away to help arrange the dessert table, she whispered, I told you he was interested. Half the young ladies in town have been setting their caps for him, but he's only had eyes for you. Adelaide blushed. It's just a dance, Martha. Of course it is, dear, Martha replied, patting her hand. And the way he looks at you is just neighborly concern, I'm sure. Throughout the evening, Rylan remained attentive, bringing Adelaide punch, introducing her to people he'd met in town, and eventually leading her onto the dance floor. As they moved to the music, Adelaide felt the stares of others, but found she didn't care. Rylan's strong arms around her and the warmth in his eyes made everything else fade into insignificance. As the evening drew to a close, Rylan drove Adelaide home in his wagon. The October night was clear and cool, stars blanketing the sky above them. At her door, he kissed her again, more deeply this time. May I call on you tomorrow? He asked. Adelaide nodded, no longer willing or able to deny the feelings growing between them. The courtship that followed was swift and intense. Rylan spent every available moment with Adelaide, helping with her ranch chores, sharing meals, and talking late into the evening. Their physical relationship progressed naturally, and when they became intimate for the first time, Adelaide discovered that passion had no age limit. By Christmas, Rylan had proposed marriage, and Adelaide, despite lingering doubts about their age difference, accepted. They planned a spring wedding, when the desert would be in bloom. January brought unseasonably harsh weather to Arizona territory. A blizzard swept through, causing havoc for ranchers and their livestock. Adelaide and Rylan worked tirelessly to protect their animals, often trudging through deep snow between their properties to assist each other. It was during one such journey that tragedy nearly struck. Rylan was returning to his ranch when the weather deteriorated rapidly. Disoriented in the wide-out conditions, his horse stumbled into a ravine. Both Rylan and his mount were injured, the horse with a broken leg, Rylan with a deep gash to his head and what appeared to be broken ribs. Despite excruciating pain, Rylan knew he had to get to shelter or freeze to death. He was forced to shoot his beloved horse, then struggled through the storm, eventually reaching Adelaide's ranch more dead than alive. Adelaide was horrified when she found him collapsed on her porch. She managed to get him inside and tend to his wounds, but his condition was grave. For 3 days and nights, she nursed him, praying he would survive, barely sleeping as she monitored his fever and changed his bandages. On the 4th day, Rylan's fever broke. When he opened his eyes and recognized her, Adelaide wept with relief. Don't cry, my love, he whispered hoarsely. It takes more than a blizzard to keep me from you. His recovery was slow but steady. As February turned to March, he regained his strength, though the ordeal left him with a slight limp and occasional headaches. Adelaide insisted he remain at her ranch until he was fully recovered, an arrangement that became permanent as they saw no reason to wait for their wedding. They were married by the circuit preacher in a simple ceremony attended by a few friends from town. Martha Porter organized a small reception at the general store, and even the town's most notorious gossips had to admit that the couple seemed blissfully happy. Spring brought new life to their ranch's foals from Rylan's prized mares. calves from Adelaide's small herd, and an unexpected blessing that Adelaide discovered in late April. She had been feeling unwell for several mornings, a wave of nausea greeting her upon waking. At first, she attributed it to the change in routine that marriage had brought. But when Martha Porter noted her pallor during a visit to town and asked pointed questions about her symptoms, Adelaide was forced to consider another possibility. "At my age?" she asked incredulously when Martha suggested she might be expecting. "That's impossible." Martha laughed kindly. "Not impossible, just uncommon. My own mother had my youngest brother at 42. Still doubtful, Adelaide consulted Dr. Wilson, who confirmed Martha's suspicion. She was indeed with child, due in late autumn. Adelaide rode home in a daze, unsure how to feel about this development. She had long since abandoned the dream of motherhood. Now, at 39, she was facing the very real prospect of having a baby. The risks were significant for both her and the child. And how would Rylan react? He had never specifically mentioned wanting children. She found him mending a fence in the south pasture, his shirt discarded in the warm May sun, muscles rippling as he worked. Seeing her approach, he straightened and smiled, that same smile that never failed to make her heart race. "You're back early," he observed, then noticed her expression. "What is it, Adelaide? Is something wrong?" She dismounted slowly. "Not wrong, exactly. Just unexpected." Rylan wiped his hands on his trousers and moved closer, concern evident in his eyes. "What did the doctor say? Are you ill?" Adelaide took a deep breath. "I'm going to have a baby, Rylan. In November." For a moment, he stared at her in stunned silence. Then, without warning, he whooped with joy, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "Careful," she protested, laughing despite herself. "That's precious cargo you're jostling." Rylan set her down gently, his hands moving to cradle her face. "A baby," he whispered, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Our baby. You're happy about this?" Adelaide asked, searching his face. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," he replied. "I'd given up hope of having children. Thought I'd started too late, chosen a solitary path for too long." He placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. "This is a miracle, Adelaide." His joy was infectious, but Adelaide couldn't help voicing her fears. "I'm 39, Rylan. Women my age. There are risks. We'll face them together," he promised. Dr. Wilson delivered babies for 20 years back east before coming west. "And we'll get you the best care possible." He kissed her tenderly. "You're strong, Adelaide. Stronger than you know." As her pregnancy progressed, Adelaide found herself surrounded by support. Martha Porter organized the town's women to prepare baby clothes and blankets. Rylan hired a young man from town to help with the ranching duties, insisting Adelaide rest more and avoid strenuous work. He even began construction on an addition to the house and nursery adjacent to their bedroom. Summer faded into autumn, and Adelaide's body changed dramatically. Her once slender frame now carried the pronounced curve of advanced pregnancy. Though tired and occasionally uncomfortable, she had never felt more alive or more loved. Rylan treated her as though she were made of precious glass, while simultaneously marveling at her strength and resilience. October brought cooler weather and increasing anticipation. Dr. Wilson visited weekly now, nodding with satisfaction at Adelaide's progress. "The baby is in position," he informed them during one visit. "Strong heartbeat. I see no reason to expect complications." But complications came nonetheless. On a chilly November morning, Adelaide woke to sharp pains and dampness between her thighs. "Rylan," she gasped, clutching his arm. "The baby's coming." He was instantly alert, helping her through the first contraction before rushing to saddle his horse. "I'll get the doctor," he promised, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. Adelaide nodded, trying to mask her fear. "Hurry." The hours that followed were a blur of pain and determination. Dr. Wilson arrived promptly, his calm presence reassuring as he directed Rylan and Martha Porter, who had come to assist. The labor was long and difficult, testing Adelaide's endurance to its limits. "The baby's large," Dr. Wilson murmured to Rylan during a brief moment when Adelaide dozed between contractions. "And she's tiring. If this goes on much longer." Rylan's face paled. "What can we do?" "Pray," the doctor replied grimly, "and be ready to make difficult decisions if necessary." But Adelaide Evans Archer had never been one to surrender to adversity. As evening approached, she rallied, finding reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. With Rylan supporting her back and whispering encouragement, she pushed their child into the world with a final, triumphant effort. "A girl," Dr. Wilson announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A perfect little girl." Tears streamed down Rylan's face as he kissed Adelaide's sweat-soaked temple. "You did it, my love. You're amazing." When the cleaned and swaddled infant was placed in her arms, Adelaide gazed down at her daughter's tiny face with wonder. She had Rylan's blue eyes and a dusting of dark hair. "She's beautiful," Adelaide whispered. "Just like her mother," Rylan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "What shall we name her?" Adelaide considered for a moment. "Hope," she said finally, "because she's the embodiment of everything I thought was lost to me." Rylan nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Hope Archer." "Perfect." The news of Hope's birth spread quickly through Promise Creek. Visitors came bearing gifts and good wishes, many expressing astonishment at Adelaide's achievement. "Never would have thought a woman your age could manage it," commented one tactless neighbor, earning a sharp look from Martha Porter. "Adelaide is hardly ancient," Martha retorted. And clearly, she was meant to be a mother. Indeed, motherhood seemed to suit Adelaide perfectly. Despite the challenges of caring for a newborn in her 4th decade, she approached each day with joy and gratitude. Rylan proved an equally devoted parent, often walking the floor with their daughter at night to allow Adelaide much-needed rest. As Hope's first birthday approached, Adelaide sat in her rocking chair on the porch, nursing her daughter while watching Rylan work with a young colt in the corral. Their ranches had prospered under their combined efforts, with Rylan's horses gaining recognition throughout the territory and Adelaide's small cattle operation providing steady income. Rylan waved to her from the corral, his smile as bright as the Arizona sun. Adelaide waved back, her heart full to bursting with love for this man who had refused to let her hide behind her age, who had shown her that it was never too late for new beginnings. Hope finished nursing and gazed up at her mother with those startling blue eyes, a tiny hand reaching up to pat Adelaide's cheek. "Yes, my darling," Adelaide murmured. "We're very lucky, you and I. Your father taught me the most important lesson of all, that love doesn't count the years. It only makes each one more precious." As if hearing his name, Rylan looked up again, his expression softening as he observed his wife and daughter. He secured the colt and strode toward the porch, taking the steps 2 at a time. "My 2 favorite ladies," he said, bending to kiss Hope's downy head before claiming Adelaide's lips in a tender kiss. Adelaide leaned into his embrace, savoring the solid warmth of him. "I was just thinking about how wrong I was," she said. "About being too old for love, for this life we've built." Rylan chuckled, settling beside her on the porch bench and draping his arm around her shoulders. "I told you so," he said, his tone gently teasing. "But I reckon some lessons have to be learned firsthand." Hope babbled happily between them, reaching for her father. Rylan took her carefully, cradling her against his broad chest with practiced ease. "Any regrets?" he asked Adelaide quietly. She shook her head, watching as their daughter patted Rylan's stubbled cheek with curious fingers. "Not one, though I do wonder what the future holds." Rylan smiled, that same smile that had first captured her heart. "Well, Dr. Wilson thinks you could safely have another child, if we wanted." Adelaide raised her eyebrows. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting, Rylan Archer?" He laughed, the sound mingling with Hope's delighted giggles. "I'm suggesting that our story is still being written, my love. And I, for one, can't wait to see what the next chapter brings." As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, casting long shadows across their land, Adelaide leaned her head against her husband's shoulder. Whatever tomorrow might bring, another child, new challenges, unexpected joys, they would face it together. She had learned that age was indeed just a number, that love could blossom at any time, and that it was never too late to embrace the life you truly wanted. For Adelaide Evans Archer, once convinced her chance at happiness had passed her by, the best years were still to come.